how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we have a very special knife to take a look at, but is it the kind you take home to mother? Is it as super as its name implies? Well, we're going to figure that out in the next few minutes. So stick with me. We'll talk about the changes that have been made, the materials that have been used, the design, and all that other stuff, and try to come up with a reasonable answer on whether or not this really deserves the moniker Super Freak. Okay, so super size, well, let's go ahead and think about that. This knife is 8 5/8 overall, so a little bit over 8.5 inches. The blade length here is 3 9/16, and the handle length is 4 7/8. Weight on this guy is 4.3 ounces, and the grip area, I know we're not really talking about ergonomics quite yet, but the grip area is 3 3/4 inches. All right, so that gives you kind of the main numbers that most people care about, and I think those are pretty good numbers. Now, can you find a knife in this size that's a little bit lighter? Yeah, I guess so, a little bit, but anything around 4 ounces at this size is, I think, pretty stinking good. Okay. And so I have no complaints at all about the size or how it carries in pocket. I've carried this a ton, and I find it really, really comfortable in pocket. By the way, I did ask Benchmade for a deep carry clip, and they sent one out to me, no problem. I put the stock clip back on for this video so that the knife kind of looks like it would come from the factory. Okay, so super size, yeah, for me, I think this is a really nice size. Now, some of you may be holding out for the upgraded mini Freek, but for me, this is ideal. So I'm totally happy with the size. I feel like about a 3.5 inch blade is nearly perfect, and this is just a hair over that. All right, what about the blade? So do we have super blade here? Super steel for sure. This is M4, which is a fantastic steel. Very good toughness, very good edge retention. The only area it struggles in is, of course, corrosion resistance. Now, as you can see, Benchmade has happily put a DLC coating on this blade. This is about the only thing that I really don't feel really good about, okay? Honestly, the blade shape, I really like. The edge geometry, I like. The cutting power, I like. The blade stock is fairly thin, but that's not really a huge issue for me. I don't get really bent out of shape over blade stock thickness. Generally, I like it to be a little bit on the thicker side, but this is absolutely fine. The only thing that I feel like would be really nice to see is a satin blade, right? So this is M4. Benchmade always coats their satin blades. And I think part of that, guys, is because Benchmade is selling a lot more knives to non-knife people. Although, let me say this, I don't think this one would be one of those, right? Who is buying this knife? It's definitely the knife community. Okay, it's definitely guys who know how to care for a blade and how to make sure that their blade doesn't rust. So I feel like the DLC coating here, yes, I get that it protects the blade from corrosion. Great. But I think that the audience for this knife doesn't really need Benchmade to hold their hand. So that's really my only complaint about the blade. Otherwise, it's really good. And in terms of performance, it does work really well. Okay, so I've got to give it that. It just cuts really nice, and the black coating does kind of match with the overall theme of the knife. I don't know, I'm tempted to do a blade swap on this, and maybe I will, and just post some pictures on Instagram with the S30V blade and just see how it looks. I'm not going to leave it that way, I just switch it right back, but it would just be, to test out whether or not I like the look of the satin better. I kind of think I would. Okay, so is the blade super? Absolutely. I really like the blade. I love the blade shape and the performance on the original Freek, and this is basically the same. So I'm really happy with the blade. Of course, M4 steel is fantastic, other than the corrosion resistance. Okay, moving on to the action. So we have an axis lock here, and I will say this, at least mine and all the reports that I've been able to check up on, this didn't have any of the challenges that sometimes Benchmade has. The centering is good. The action was nice right out of the box, and you can see it does work. Wow. On camera, this is a little harder to do. There we go. So it does work like the typical Benchmade axis lock, so it's very fidget friendly. The weak point, of course, on the axis lock that many of you are aware of is that there have been stories, quite a few of them, of broken Omega springs. I've never had it happen to me, so I really don't feel that strongly about it. But if you have, and you've had, if you've had 2 or 3 Benchmades and you've had like 2 or 3 broken Omega springs, the frustration level must be super high. I honestly don't, I've never had that as an issue. So I feel like the axis lock is very reliable, very strong, and like the Omega springs work just fine. If Benchmade did make an announcement that, hey, we're going to build these out of slightly more robust steel or something like that, I would be quite happy because I do feel like that is a bit of a weak point from an engineering standpoint. But that's really about the only complaint that I can make about lockup and deployment. I love the fact that this is a drop shut knife that's on washers. And again, that kind of reminds us, you know, I know the ceramic bearings and ceramic detent and all that is the big thing right now, but when a knife is well built, phosphor bronze washers are fantastic and absolutely more durable than a bearing pivot system. So I really, really like the action on this. I find it works very well, although I wouldn't argue with anyone who said they don't like Omega springs. Hey, if you don't like Omega springs, that's fair enough because I have, like you, heard of some issues with them. All right, so we've got the blade. Is the blade super? It's pretty darn good. Is the action super? Again, it's pretty darn good. Finally, the area that I really think is super, let's take a look at the handle. So, by the way, these colors, if you didn't know, were inspired by Deadpool. And so that's kind of cool in and of itself. The other thing is, I've got to say, it's really, really attractive. So this is black and gray layered G10 that then they have textured, and it is really, really nice. It's just a perfect balance between being smooth enough to go in and out of pocket well, smooth enough to be comfortable and not tear up your skin, but having a nice and good solid traction plan so you're not the slightest bit worried about like dropping the knife or having it slip out of your hand in, you know, less than ideal conditions. And then you have that really nice pop of color with the red layer on the inside and those bright red standoffs. Really, really nicely done. And of course, this is the biggest difference here. And this is huge. Now, I've got to go on a little, rant over here for a second, guys. So just bear with me. Why didn't Benchmade just make this knife this way in the first place? It didn't need to be layered G10. It didn't need to be quite as fancy as all of this. But had they just gone with like a contoured G10, it would have made the knife so fantastic right out of the gate. Okay, but for some reason, Benchmade thinks that G10 is like this super premium material that costs thousands of dollars per ounce and only belongs on $200 knives. And I don't get it, okay? You can buy $15 knives from China with contoured G10. So why Benchmade feels like, they're only going to use G10 if you're paying $200 is beyond me. I don't know what is going on over there. Anyway, sorry about that little side trail, but that is really, really frustrating that Benchmade even bothers putting out knives that are made of plastic. Why at this point in time when G10 is so much better? Okay, back to the knife itself. Yes, I do love the handle. Yes, I feel like this is a huge upgrade. But having said all that, I didn't actually hate the original handle. I know some people really disliked it. I mean, I carried it and used it all the time. It went in and out of pocket just fine for me. I don't know. Perhaps some people were just a little put off by the rubber, just on initial reaction, and they never did do enough testing with it to figure it out. Or maybe there's just a lot of people wearing, skinny jeans out there that have these tight pockets that they can't fit anything in. I wouldn't expect that from the knife world, but hey, who knows? So is the handle super? The handle is really, really well done. It's very attractive and a huge upgrade from the original, although I didn't dislike the original at all. By the way, I've already mentioned, but you can, if you want a deep carry clip for this, go ahead and ask Benchmade and they'll send you one. So let's move on now to some comparisons. One of the things that makes something super is that, hey, it stands out from the others, right? If I'm trying to lift a car and I can't do it, a superhero shows up who's way stronger than me, right? So let's take a look at some of the other sort of standard bearer knives in this segment. Okay, and then I've also got my my Crooked River here as well. And I suppose a mini Crooked River would probably be a little smaller, but of a similar size. So maybe you'd want to consider that one as well. Okay, so the other thing we want to think about as we do these comparisons is value. So we have a sprint run Para 2. This is not the most expensive sprint run. These can usually be had for around 140 bucks. The steel, of course, being M4 is going to be quite a bit different. So probably it would be more fair to compare this to, you know, an M390 Sprint run or an S110V Sprint or something else like that. But the fact is that limited run paras go for quite a high price, you know, 160, 170, 200 bucks. And so to ask a close to $200 for a limited edition Benchmade or special edition Benchmade doesn't seem that out of line, okay? And so the other question I guess we have to ask is, which one of these would I take? And there are things that I like about both, but I think as a general EDC knife for the average person, the Freek does edge out the Para 2 just a little bit. I like the looks of it a little bit better, and I like the blade a little bit better, especially the extra cutting edge. Okay, so that's a comparison worth thinking about. Probably the most standard and highly recommended EDC knife out there. This is, of course, the Rotator Model 1 in D2. And, you know, pretty budget-friendly knife here, but because it's so common, I wanted to pull this in. And, you know, yeah, if you're looking for a good EDC knife, now the Benchmade weighs a little less, the lock is a little nicer and a little nicer to fidget with, and the blade steel is a big upgrade, but I feel like anytime I'm looking at an EDC knife, you ought to bring the Rotator Model 1 in for at least a short comparison. Steel wheel Lanner, another G10 handled knife, this one again in D2, so the steel is going to be an upgrade, but these are probably a little more similar, you know, not that different in size or weight. Obviously the price is quite a bit different. These guys go for like $60, $65, I think, and this guy's going to be $190. Of course, again, the steel is a big upgrade, and the overall, you know, quality and smoothness of operation is going to be different as well. Finally, let's bring in, so this is the Recon one, but there are a number of cold steels that we could bring in, perhaps like the new 8010 or the American Lawman, both of which I think are great EDC knives. The Recon one is not a knife, you know, I love the Recon one, and for me it's perfect, but I understand that it's going to be big for some people. But cold steel really does throw a wrench in the works because you're getting S35VN, you're getting G10, you're getting a super strong lock, and, you know, a standard Recon one is going to be under $100. So is an American Lawman. An Ultimate Hunter, I think, is like $130. The 8010 is $130 or $140. Okay, so there's, you know, cold steel really kind of throws a wrench in the works of our comparison. And then finally, one other knife that, you know, I brought for a very specific reason, okay? Because this is my own upgrade of a standard Benchmade. All right, this of course is the Crooked River, and I was able to get the scales and pivot collar and backspacer all from Rogue, oh yeah, and clip, all from Rogue Blade Works, and they did a fantastic job of it. And so this is a comparable knife because, you know, the standard Crooked River, I think, costs about $170. I could be wrong on that. Maybe it's up to $180 or something. And I've spent an additional, I don't know, probably $100 or so here. So we're looking at nearly a $300 knife, but with this particular Crooked River. Now, you can go to Benchmade's website and specify a Crooked River for yourself. And you have all kinds of options: bolster colors, handle colors, pivot collar, blade options. Even, I think you can even get a 20 CV blade, which is pretty cool. But this knife does make the point that clearly on a knife that I really like, and probably you too, I'm willing to put some extra funds toward it to really make it something special. And I think that's what's happened here. You know, this is a really, really cool knife. And yeah, it costs more. But for that extra money, you are getting something that I think is pretty cool and pretty special. And I will say, I don't regret for a second, okay, buying this knife. And I know a lot of people who also have it don't regret it either. In fact, they really kind of love it. Now, some of you would hear that price point, $190, and say, dude, the original is $110, just buy that. And if you say that, I absolutely get it. However, for me, you know, I love this design. And having this really awesome design now in an extremely cool looking configuration with the black M4 blade, with the nice pop of color, the layered G10, all of these things I think come together to make this a pretty super knife, okay? So there you go. That's my take on the Benchmade Super Freek. Yeah, it's a little expensive, but you are getting something pretty special. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. If you think, this is a hard pass for you, or if this is, just a total grail knife, absolutely fantastic. Wherever you land on that spectrum, I'd love to know about it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And by the way, go over to White Mountain Knives and see if you can pick one of these up. They may not have any in stock. A lot of people don't, but I got mine from White Mountain Knives, and I do find them to be so great. You can use my discount code SHARPSTUFF for 10% off. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.